Welcome, everyone. The Sports Writers Podcast. They are here. The sports writers from the Salem News, Phil Stacy, Matt Williams, Nick Giannino. I'm Bill Newell with MSO News Sports. And gentlemen, let's get underway here. We've got winter sports to talk about, but Phil, there's a little bit of football and league realignments a little bit with the announcement coming on Monday that Manchester Essex is going full board into the Cape Ann League. We had Essex Tech go in this year. Cape Ann League's Manchester Essex did not play in the football Cape Ann League schedule. They were in the Commonwealth Conference, Commonwealth Athletic Conference. And so, Phil, and that also is going to impact some Thanksgiving games, right?
Yeah,
Or
so with
could it?
Manchester going into the Cape Ann League, that'll give it a true 5-5 team split between the two divisions that they have there, which is great. So you'll have Manchester Essex down in the lower half with Linfield, North Reading. I'm sorry, Linfield, Hamilton Wenham, Ipswich, and who else is in that lower? Is North Reading in that lower one?
Amesbury.
Amesbury, yes,
Right in the
Okay.
large, yeah.
So with Georgetown, it looks like they're not going to have a football team for the foreseeable future. They've merged with Pentucket. Manchester was looking for a holiday foe. They played North Middlesex this past year. They've now hooked on with Essex Tech, which is great. You got two Cape Ann League teams going at each other. They've played 16 times over the years. In fact, they played the highest scoring North Shore football game of all time. 14 years ago, it was like a 64-47 game when Essex Tech was still North Shore Tech, and they were the Bulldogs then, not the Hawks. But
Yeah.
So they certainly have a relationship with each other. I think they played as recently as 2018. So they'll be playing each other. Now that has some ramifications, obviously. Northeast Regional, who Essex Tech used to play, is now going to play Masconomet, which to me is a big step up for Northeast Regional, but it's good because Masconomet needed a dance partner on the holiday. They're going to have a new coach with Gavin Monagle having stepped down at the end of the season. Their 2-year run, they meaning Masconomet, their 2-year run with Bishop Fenwick is now over. Bishop Fenwick is going back to play St. Mary's once again. They've had an on-again, off-again Thanksgiving Day relationship. Willie, you said it went on for about, what, 20-something years, 64 to 91, I want to say off the top of my head. And then it was reignited in the mid-2000s for 4 years. Haven't played each other for a few years, but now they are back again. They're going to play the Wednesday before Thanksgiving next year at the Manning Bowl in Lynn. Now, it would make sense to me, this is only my opinion, whatever that's worth, but I would love to see Masconomet play another Northeastern Conference school. Or, if that wasn't going to happen, I would love to have seen Fenwick maybe play their crosstown rivals from Peabody. Now, Peabody obviously has played Saugus for a long time. It's been a very one-sided rivalry. What did we say, Willie, before Thanksgiving? Peabody had only lost like 3 times in the last 33 years, 35 years against Saugus. Is that right?
Well, since 1992 or 3, whenever that streak started, Saugus won, I believe the second Paul Uva year. They snapped that long streak, so that would have been 2006, I think.
Yeah.
And then Saugus, they won. Peabody broke away after that. They played Malden Catholic a couple times. Saugus won the first game back. So that would have been 2008, I believe. And then they beat Mark Betancourt his first year, which was 2014. And they beat him the winless year too. So what's that? Four times since Bill Clinton was elected. So that's not a lot. I mean, it's interesting. You mentioned that. I mean, with the changes we're seeing here in the Cape Ann League now, so all 10 teams have play teams in their own league, whereas in the Northeast Conference that's not the case. Now, obviously, Winthrop and Revere, that's a 100-year rivalry, right? Like that's never going to change, most likely. So the NEC's got 10 teams. You take Winthrop out, that's 9 teams. That's an odd number, right? So no matter how you slice it, somebody's going to be left out in the cold. At this moment, that's Masconomet. So on the one hand, you can't necessarily blame them. They got to go find someone. Northeast Tech. I mean, you see the number of kids that leave Masconomet to go to private school. I don't want this to sound harsh, but like, are you going to stay in town to play Northeast on Thanksgiving Day? Realistically, I mean, is that a real good argument? I don't know. But you take what you can get. So if you swapped around those dance partners, that means that one of these other teams in the NEC would be looking elsewhere, trying to find something that fits, right? So that's just a math problem, right? You got 10 teams and 9 teams looking for games on Thanksgiving because Winthrop's out of the equation. Um, it's a musical chairs, right? When the music stops, one of those teams, whether it's Masco or potentially Peabody or Saugus, is going to be left, standing up with no chair because obviously Beverly Salem isn't changing, Marblehead Swampscott isn't changing.
Danvers
You
Gloucester's
know,
not changing.
I mean, I guess
Yeah.
Danvers Gloucester's not that old. You could make it a case that that's similar to Peabody and Saugus. Maybe that's a shuffle, but there is probably a little bit more parity in that series than that one, and no appetite to change it, right? So, um, it's an imperfect solution, right? Like somebody's going to be left standing with the math. The numbers just aren't even. Whereas in the Cape Ann, with the 10 and the 5, and especially, nobody wants to see Georgetown not have a football team, right? But that does, make the numbers a lot easier and makes things easier for Essex Tech. We should note too that with this realignment, I believe that the Cape Ann League teams will not all be playing one another with the forced crossovers. I did not clarify that exact point, but Coach Dan Connors did tell me Saturday morning when we discussed this that that Essex Tech is still going to get to play Northeast. They're going to play in week 2 next year, so they're really excited about that. The opportunity to keep that rivalry going, keep passing that trophy back and forth. Continue to have their Commonwealth sort of tech school rivalries and roots, but also be able to start a new tradition in their new league. That's really kind of the best of both worlds for Essex Tech. They're really excited about that.
And as we've talked about previously in the podcast, next year, because of the way the dates fall with the first day of practice, when they can start games and how late Thanksgiving is in the year, every team will have at least one bye week. It's a 9-week regular season, but you can only play a maximum of 8 games. So every team will have at least 1 week off, which allows for some of that to happen where you could get in a non-league game in the case of Essex Tech here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and Fenwick and St. Mary's, we should note, have played each other in the regular season.
Yeah.
So if you move that game to the end of November, that potentially opens up a spot on the schedule during the first 9 weeks for Fenwick to go find another interesting school. I mean, as we've seen lately, they've scheduled Marblehead, they've scheduled BC High, they'll schedule anybody. So
Right.
that'll be
MC.
interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Willie, you're the Peabody guy, but I think a Fenwick Peabody Thanksgiving Day rival would have been great theater. A lot of those kids know each other. A lot of Peabody kids go to Fenwick. I think it would have drawn a great crowd. I think it would have been, pretty even most years, that matchup.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I get it's kind of a you're a Division 2, borderline Division 1 team playing a Division you know
5.
6 team that plays in Division 5 because they're you know honestly they have the guts to do it. I mean, Fenwick's enrollment doesn't put them where they are, but they're a proud program and they play up to their credit, right? So in some ways it's like if you're Peabody, if you win, you kind of look like a bully, and if you lose, you kind of lose your kids to that school, right? It's from the outside looking in, it's a little bit of a lose-lose for Peabody, but as a fan and knowing the coaching staffs, I mean, it's awesome. It would be awesome in that sense. I mean, I was just talking to some of the coaches over this weekend, and you forget because of COVID, but they had a Peabody youth football team that went to a Super Bowl, only gave up 1 touchdown the whole season in 2019. And all the kids that started on that team are the starters for Fenwick, the starters for Peabody High, and one kid that goes to Hamilton Wenham, and a couple of kids that go to St. John's. So it would have been a lot of fun. And a lot of the dads, right? Dave Dugan, Matt O'Brien, Mr. Dresser, like a lot of the dads coach together and are coaching on the high school staff too. So I know those guys are really tight. They're really good friends. There's a ton of respect. So from that standpoint, it would have been tremendous. And I would love to see it in the regular season. I mean, that would be great. There was talk of creating a Breckenridge Cup, in memory of Rob Henry Breckenridge that passed away. The Peabody policeman who was friends with all the Peabody High coaches. Coached there for a minute, coached at Fenwick for even longer. Was one of the great linebackers in Fenwick history. So if the game ever does come to pass, I mean, certainly there'd be a big crowd and a big trophy with Henry's name on it. And a
Well,
big
I mean,
smile
they
for
play
that
each
reason.
other in lacrosse, for the Danish Cup every year. They play in
Exactly.
hockey.
That's what they wanted to model it after. Exactly.
Yeah.
They, boys basketball Sunday,
Boys
they played.
basketball they've played. So, I mean, I understand your point, Willie. The bigger school, you don't want to lose to a smaller school, but I do think it almost kind of supersedes that a little bit, where it's like city rivalry, and if Fenwick's willing to play up, I think that would be great. But hey, it didn't come to pass. So as you said, hopefully they can work out something in the near future where they can play during the regular season. I think that would be a great treat for fans in both programs.
Yeah, football is to me, and I'm still one of these people. Football is just a different animal, right? I mean, there are a lot of schools that can play St. John's Prep in soccer and baseball and basketball that have no business on the football field, right? And I'm not saying that Fenwick doesn't. I'm just saying it sometimes is a different animal and doesn't line up the same way as some of those other sports. I mean, I realize it's certainly not 25 years ago, right? But at the same time, the way it looks, the perspective of, geez, like I don't know. It's interesting, that's for sure. It is interesting. I'm not trying to like shortchange anybody. I hope people understand what I'm saying. It's just when you're the bigger school in that situation, you're kind of in a tough spot. I mean, I think Marblehead, like, do they wish they had that game back after the way it transpired? I don't know.
I know we want to move on to winter sports here, but let me just throw one more thing out there on this is that, so my idea would be Peabody Masco Thanksgiving. I have no problem with Peabody Bishop Fenwick on Thanksgiving either, but then you develop that Masco Peabody rivalry because they're really like one exit apart on 95, Route 1, two exits apart. So that could be a neat rivalry down the road once Masco joined the Northeastern Conference. And then you could always then have Northeast play Saugus, their neighboring schools as well, practically. Share the same hockey rink,
Kind
I
of
think, or
what
they
we
used to.
expected, but
So
that would have seemed to make more sense from a mix and match perspective. But hey, they don't pay us to make the decisions, right?
no, so I'm just throwing it out there. Just
Bill, you make the mistake of bringing logic into this conversation. Do so at your own peril.
Okay. All right. So on that note, we've never been accused of that before, but here we go. Let's since we haven't heard a lot from Nick Giannino, let's just jump to boys basketball. And Nick, what can you share with us here winter boys basketball here on the North Shore?
Well, maybe it's the discussion we've had and listening in on Peabody, but definitely worth highlighting them. They're off to a 3-0 start. As you previously mentioned, Bill, they beat Bishop Fenwick, they've beaten Masconomet, and they've beaten Beverly. And all of those wins were pretty convincing, minus the Beverly one. I think that was kind of a back and forth battle that they pulled out late. But Peabody's looking good. It's tough to kind of decipher what was going to happen with this team this year. They lost some pieces. Obviously, Shea Lynch and Danny Barrett, the football guys that were just terrific athletes and really brought a lot to the court. And they're gone. But, this is AJ Forte's team now. He's a tremendous player, and he's shown it through 3 games. He's been lighting up the scoreboard, and I believe he's battling a little bit of an injury too, but he's playing through it. And he had a 30-point game. He had a good game. Was a 30-point game against Beverly, Matt?
Yes, 31. Yeah,
31 against Beverly. And I know Matt Williams tweeted something out about that game. It's been quite a while since Peabody has gotten the best of Beverly, and obviously Beverly doesn't have Ryder Frost anymore, and they lost some key pieces, from the program that they've been building up the past 5 or 6 years under head coach Matt Karakoutis, but they're still a good team, a good program. They have some newcomers that are filling different roles now, and so that was a good win for Peabody. They're off to a great start, and like I said, Forte, he's a really talented player. I think he's going to score a ton of points this year for them, and he's got a nice complementary guard right next to him, and Raph Laurent, and they got they don't have a ton of size. That's kind of been the MO for most of the NEC teams this season. Not a lot of size, right? Marblehead's got some decent height, but across the board, most of these teams are guard heavy. Salem, Masconomet, Peabody, Beverly, Danvers, I've seen they don't have a lot of size. So, I think a lot of these teams are going to match up pretty well against each other from that aspect. But great start for Peabody, and we'll see what comes from some of these other teams. I know Marblehead is looking to make another run in the tournament this year. They lost some talent as well, but they bring back a lot of guys. I think they should be a solid group. Beverly's going to have their growing pains, but they still got some players, returning all-star Noe Diaz, another younger guard in Jacob Class, who's going to see a largely increased role this season after playing big minutes last year. You got Masco, who's still trying to find themselves. They got a lot of athletes, and the same thing with Danvers. A lot of athletes that play other sports that are, talented kids, but not necessarily basketball first guys. So could be a lot of lower scoring games this season. I wouldn't be surprised to see, some defensive matchups, but Peabody's been scoring the points, so I can't say that about them. But I think it's going to be an interesting year in the NEC. At this point, it doesn't look like we have any real state champion contenders or anything like that, but it's very early, and some of these matchups are going to be very interesting. And to stick with the boys hoop and jump to some of the other conferences, Hamilton Wenham is a young team. They're still growing. I really like this kid, A.B. LaBelle. He showed a lot of good things last year. I believe he was a sophomore last year. He's going to be a junior now. I could be wrong on that. He might be a senior, but very good shooter. He's going to be a fun player to watch. Ipswich, the same thing. They got a lot of good shooters. They had a tough loss to Newburyport tonight, but they've been playing solid out of the gate. Let's see, Bishop Fenwick, they got a couple nice wins to open the season. We mentioned them last week on the podcast, winning that Zach Markowitz title. They've kind of come back down to earth with a couple losses, but still sitting at 2-2 after a 2-win season last year. They got some talent. Pingree still hasn't lost a game. Ray Cuevas, the Ipswich kid, senior there, he's been killing it, averaging about 24, 25 points, does a little bit of everything for them. So it's going to be a fun season on the boys hoop front. And St. John's Prep, got to mention them. They're looking to make strides, now with Dave Clay in his second year at the helm for them. They had a tough season last year, did get into the playoffs despite their 6 wins, thanks to their strength of schedule, but weren't able to win any games in the Division I tournament. So that's got to be a goal of theirs. Going to be interesting to see. And then Salem, back to the NEC. We didn't talk about Salem much. They're a team that's also going to rely on athletes. Corey Grimes, we've talked a ton about him for the football season he had, and he's going to be a key player for them on the hardwood. They got Devontae Ozuna, the running back from the Salem football team. He's going to be a key player. Quinn Rocco Ryan, I think he wants to kind of make that push and have people just call him Rocco now. It's funny, I asked him during the football season, what he prefers, and he said, well, the only one that still calls me Quinn is my mother. So we'll roll with Rocco for now. I think it's confusing because a lot of people think that Rocco Ryan is his last name, but really it's just a nickname, Rocco Ryan. Anyway, he's going to be another key player for them. And an interesting tidbit for Salem, they did pick up Jordan Maxson, who was an 8th grader on the Salem Academy team last year and did very well, averaged double figures, skilled kid, really loves basketball, works hard at it. He transferred back home to Salem High, and he's just a freshman, but he's got some good size and good skill. I think he'll be a great fit in Salem for head coach Tom Doyle.
Why don't we have more tall basketball players on the North Shore? I mean, what's going on here?
I don't know what it is. Who was it that I was talking? Manchester Essex has a 6'6" kid that's pretty solid.
Okay.
Horaeus, Eddie Horaeus, and they obviously have Cade First, who just netted his 1,000th career point in their first game. I think he was 3 points away going into the season, so he got that pretty quickly. So I think Manchester Essex is going to be solid. They had a defensive battle with Hamilton Wenham, but were able to pull out a win. So they're 2-0, and yeah, he's really the only guy over 6'5", 6'6" that I can think of. I'm sure St. John's Prep probably has a couple kids that are pretty tall. I haven't seen them play yet, but
Yeah.
as a whole, it really is a guard heavy rotations in the area, and we're at the point with high school basketball that it's really positionless anyway, right? You don't have that traditional center that you're going to feed in the paint and have him go to work. It's just a lot of teams play outside, inside out, outside, inside out more often now. So
Are there any true centers you can think of, Nick?
no, most of
Doesn't Marblehead have a kid? I'm trying to think. I talked to Coach Giardi.
well, they
I think
had
they,
Miles O'Neill. He was a big
but
kid. Oh, they have Scott Campbell. He's
that's what
probably
I'm thinking of. I think. Yeah.
he's a
Okay.
big kid on the football team. He's more of a traditional center, I'd say. So yeah,
Corey Grimes could play like a traditional center,
I think
possibly
Corey
too.
Grimes is
Whatever he
going to
wants.
spend a lot of time in the post. Yeah, but
Yeah.
as a whole, yeah, we don't have those. We don't have any Patrick Ewings coming through that door like back in the day.
No. All right.
Yeah, not a lot of real big guys. And Ryder
I heard,
Frost, he was a 6'6" kid for Beverly, but he wasn't a center. He
no.
played more on the outside and jump shots and whatnot. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's rare to come by those traditional bigs.
All right. Phil, I heard St. John's Prep a few times, and let's just go right to boys hockey, where St. John's Prep actually lost a game this past weekend.
Yeah, it's surprising, isn't it, when you say like, oh, they actually lost? I mean, it does happen. Not often, but it does. Yeah, they came out a little bit flat, I would say. I mean, strange to say when they outshoot a team 38-14, a team that's probably a top 6 team in the state, to be honest with you, in Hingham. I thought there were really long stretches where the Prep dominated, but they were sloppy. They'd be the first to tell you that.
Is Hingham a state title team from a different division than
no,
the
they're
Prep
Division
was?
One team.
They were? Oh, okay.
They didn't win a state title, but they're traditionally one of, if not the best public school team in the state.
Yeah. Okay.
And they're right there. I mean, they've got a deep roster. They've got tons of skill, good goaltending. They were fast. They were smart with the puck. I think St. John's just hurt themselves a little bit defensively. They weren't really committed to the process as I think they would normally want to be. Now, you give up 14 shots in 51 minutes. They played 17-minute periods. You say, what are you talking about? They didn't play well defensively. What I mean by that is they didn't have the layers that I would have liked to have seen them once Hingham did reach the attacking zone. They were able to go at the net on the few opportunities that they have, I thought pretty well, and the defense didn't clamp around them well. 3 mistakes, I'll call it 2 turnovers and 1 bad penalty, led to the 3 Hingham goals. Now, you can look at the film and say, geez, these are all easily correctable, and they are. And it's not like this is going to send St. John's Prep into a tailspin. But I do think it was a wake-up call for a group that has some veterans back, but it's a different team than the one that reached the state semifinals last year, or the one that won the state title 2 years ago. They got a new goalie in AJ Farisi. They got 3 new starters on defense. They've got a lot of new faces on the 3rd and 4th lines. Yes, they still have, Jack Doherty on defense, and they still have Christian Rosa and Jake Vanna and Cam Umla and Johnny Tighe up front, guys like that. But it's going to take time for them to find their footing, so to speak. So in these eyes, and maybe the coaching staff thinks differently, but not the worst thing in the world for them to get knocked off in the opening game, especially after going unbeaten in the preseason. But these guys to realize we don't just throw on the shirt, say, hey, we're St. John's Prep, and go out and win. Like, it doesn't work that way. Rhode Island State Power LaSalle comes in this Friday. Then right after Christmas, they host the Pete Frady's Winter Classic, where they're going to be playing BC High, Central Catholic, Pope Francis right now, the top team in the state. So these changes are going to have to happen quickly for St. John's to turn things around.
All right. Willie, let's I'm looking at the clock here, and maybe we can breeze through some other sports. We can always come back to hockey too, Phil.
Sure.
But Matt, do you want to touch girls hockey quickly for us? And then we got some girls basketball. Maybe you guys can comment on that.
I would just give credit real quick to two mild surprise teams, Maskinaw and Gloucester, both 3-0, and going to play each other late Wednesday night, 8:00 start. Neither of these teams has been 3-0. I don't think Gloucester's been 3-0 since they restarted the program, and Masco hasn't been since they broke off and kind of had to do their own thing. So really impressive starts by the two of them, and they're going to get to play each other again and see who can keep it going. You know, both Division II teams, both trying to make the playoffs. Gloucester hasn't made the playoffs, fun fact, since 2001, which was like the first or second year of girls hockey, period.
Who was
And
coaching that team? Was it like Dickie McNeil?
I don't even know. Yeah, something like that.
Well, maybe even our buddy Pete Kelly was
I
on
was
the
gonna
team.
say, I think the Kellys were involved. Yeah. So you know,
in Gloucester.
that's a
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
that's a long time ago. They didn't have the numbers. They haven't had their own team for, you know, they went about 15 years without having their own team. This is the fourth year or third year, I think, that it's been back. I think it was like since COVID, right? So this would be the third year. A lot of the seniors on this team kind of restarted the program as freshmen. They've taken their lumps. They're all grown up, and they're a half decent team. And we're going to see, you know, when they come against the Iron here, how it goes. And the same thing goes for Masco. A lot of their, you know, they only have 3 seniors, but they all started as 8th graders together. And, you know, when Newburyport broke off, and they've won their last 2 games against Newburyport, which means a lot to them. So it should be a good showdown to see what happens there. I know the goaltender for Masconomet, Mackenzie Cronin, senior captain, she's much improved, did a lot of camps and a lot of skating over the summer to get ready for her senior season. She's a really good lacrosse goalie too. So it's been great to see her playing well. And the other team, I guess we shut out real quick before we move on, is Beverly. You know, they get shut out in their opener, and they've won their last 2 games. They've scored 12 goals in those 2 games. So whatever wasn't clicking opening night is certainly clicking for Beverly. They're averaging 6 a night in their wins, and if they continue to score at that rate, obviously they're going to win a lot of games.
How about a quick note on girls basketball? I'm trying to think. Peabody won their opener, right? Did I have that right? Or the
I mean, it's been the Celia K and Logan Lemazny show so far.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, K 20 points a night, you know, 14 boards a night. Logan is just eating the NEC for breakfast, which I mean she's been doing for 3 years, a 2-time league MVP. But you know, her stat line is like it's Shy Guy like with the rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, you name it. I mean, what did she have? I think the other night was 27, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 steals, and 2 blocks. I mean, it's just it's all over the place. I think
But
the
that's hardly
surprise.
a shock to anybody. I think that you know either one of those young ladies would be playing as well as they are. I mean, they'd be on anybody's North Shore dream team.
Oh, no
So for them,
question.
so for them to come out and have the start that they have is really remarkable. I think it's also important to note, and I know I don't want us to sound like a broken record, and I certainly hope like we don't. But with girls basketball season here again, it's a reminder that you know we really miss Jean DePlacido. Jean was our girls hoop maven. In reaching out to coaches during the preseason, a lot of them have said to us, you know, like, "Oh, geez, won't feel the same without Jean around and all." And believe me, we hear you. There, it's you know, what she did. You know, what she did in general was remarkable. All the work she put in as a, you know, quote unquote part timer who never said no to anything and worked whenever we asked her to. But she really had a great handle on the girls basketball coverage. So we miss her. We know that the coaches and I'm sure that the players and the parents miss her too. So nice time to remember her.
I think one of the things from her articles that I'm going to miss the most when we edited them is the 3-point bombs. I'm gonna have to find a way to use that term in some of my boys' hoop stuff. But yeah, she loved the girls' hoop. You know, much like a lot of the other stuff she covered, and we're definitely gonna miss her. And you know, we'll do our best to keep the coverage, you know, excellent for the girls' side as well.
I think
so it's going to take 3 guys to take her place, right? Is that what I'm hearing here with you guys, right? I mean, because she did the girls' basketball column for you guys for years, right? The weekly column, as well as games. I'm sorry, Willie. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say 2 other names to keep an eye on. For Danvers, Angie Joku, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but she broke her ankle last year. Was having a phenomenal season, coming off a phenomenal volleyball season, and she's a game changer all over the floor. Plays with a lot of power. She plays basketball with the power with which she plays volleyball, so that's a lot of fun to watch. And there's a freshman for Beverly, Jules Stevenson. She scored 20 in the opener, 17 in the second game. So what's that, 18 and a half a night or something like that. Now, Beverly hasn't won a game yet, but she continues to score at that clip. That's not going to last very long. They're going to get plenty of wins.
Yeah.
And also over at Pingree, Bella Vaz. She's been off to a strong start for them. They got a first-year head coach in Brendan Barboza, and seems like they're off and running. And Bella had a terrific season last year, and she's back as a senior captain. Great shooter. Didn't she have a game last year where she hit like 10 threes or something?
Oh, she's tremendous. Yeah, if we had a 3-point shooting contest, she'd be the odds-on favorite. I would guess. She's knockdown shooter.
Yeah. So they got a couple snipers in Pingree on the boys and the girls side, between Cuevas with the boys and Bella on the girls side.
All right, guys, here's a question for you. And we got to do this one relatively quickly here. Should Belichick be the Patriots coach next year? Yes or no? It doesn't have to be a yes or no answer, but Phil, what do you think?
I'm not convinced he's gone, to be honest with you. And while he certainly doesn't seem to have adjusted to life without Tom Brady very well, and he's made some very questionable coaching decisions and personnel decisions, I do think, and call me crazy, I think that you got to think long and hard before replacing somebody with all the terrible coaches that are out there. I mean, franchises are littered with them. Do you really want to give up the arguably greatest coach of all time for, I don't know, whoever? I'm just not sold it's a done deal.
I'm with you, and I think that he should be back. I'd hate to see him go to another team and kick our butts next year, with a different team. Again, like Phil said, what's our option if we don't have Belichick? We're going to go find one of these other guys and start rotating coaches every couple of years. Just don't think that's the answer. You can blame it on Belichick as much as you want, but this team's just not very good. We just don't have a lot of talent. So I think there's going to have to be some moves with the coaching staff and obviously with personnel, but I don't think firing Belichick, letting go of Belichick is the right move.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done with them. See you later. They don't have much talent. This isn't a high school team where it's like you get whoever's born in the city. It's his job to get the talent, right? So see you later. I mean, it's enough. I've had it with the whole thing, the act, the press conferences. I'm just ready for something new. I don't want to watch it anymore. It's run its course. If he does well somewhere else, I mean, Andy Reid's doing pretty well somewhere else, and nobody would say Philadelphia shouldn't have fired him at the end because that was a dumpster fire too. It's time. And hey, if they have the greatest owner in the world, and just ask him, then he won't hire a bozo. He'll hire one of the other good ones, right? So that's what we're supposed to have faith in now. And as far as everybody pushing back and saying, "Oh, it's not true," I mean, hey, I've seen this show before too. We heard all the reports of how unhappy Brady was. They put out their 3-way statement about how they loved each other and they're committed to each other and blah, blah, blah. And 2 months later, he was out the door too. So they got a little bit of a history of denying things that are going to happen. And then those things happen anyway, right? So I'm not taking the cheese on this again twice. I mean, this is a historically bad team. Historically bad teams get their coaches fired. I mean, and I can't think of many examples of teams that are this bad rebounding and being good later with the same coach. I mean, that's pretty unusual. So I'm just ready for something.
Willie, I didn't want you to hold back here, but thanks
I'm
for
ready for something new. It's not that it's bad. I mean, God bless the guy. I mean, he'll be in the Hall of Fame and they'll put his bust up and he deserves it and he deserves all this money and everything else. But as a fan, as someone who wants something to do on Sundays to watch, I'm just ready for something new.
All right. On that note, we're done. We're out of time. We were about to get clicked off here, but gentlemen, great job. Thank you. And we'll talk again soon.
Thanks.